Some names are forever woven into history, not only through deeds, but through the brilliance that surrounded them. Astor is one of those names, a dynasty of palaces, fortunes, and jewels, and the stories of two women who carried it, like two very different novels written in precious stones. On one side, Nancy Astor, an American who broke into British high society and made history as the first woman to take a seat in the House of Commons. She built a political career in London, danced at Cliveden's glittering parties, and wore on her head the legendary Sancy diamond, a jewel whose story stretches back to the 14th century. For her, jewels were weapons, shields of status, shining under the brightest chandeliers of Europe. On the other side, Brooke Aster, New York's grande dame, philanthropist and hostess of dazzling soirees. She lived almost a century, gave millions to libraries and museums, but never stepped outside without her jewels. Her collection brimmed with emeralds, pearls, whimsical animal brooches by Van Cleef and Arpels, and rare masterpieces from Bulgari and Cartier. For her, jewels were not mere ornaments, but the fabric of her legend. Two women, two continents, two eras, and yet bound by more than a name. Their lives were mirrors of their times. Nancy, with her groundbreaking role in British politics, the coronations she attended, the scandals of the 1930s. Brooke, with the glamour of Manhattan, record-breaking Sotheby's auctions, and the sting of personal betrayal. Nancy had the Sancy diamond, a stone that outlived kings and revolutions. Brooke had emeralds, rubies, and diamonds that decades later sold for millions. Some jewels now shine in the Louvre, some vanished into private vaults, others disappeared altogether. Today, we'll step into both of their worlds. We'll see how jewels marked politics and scandals, love and betrayal, splendor and downfall. And we'll ask, which treasures leave the deeper mark? Those that witnessed royal coronations, or those that symbolized social power in Manhattan? Nancy Astor's story begins far from London's palaces and aristocratic drawing rooms. She was born Nancy Witcher Langhorne in 1879 in Danville, Virginia. A small-town girl from the American South could hardly have imagined her name one day written into the history of British politics and of fine jewelry. But fate had other plans. From an early age, Nancy was sharp-witted, lively, and unstoppable. She married young, Robert Gould Shaw II, but the union collapsed. For a divorced woman in early 20th century America, the future looked grim. Nancy chose otherwise. In 1905, she sailed for England to begin anew, and there she found not just a new home, but a new destiny. In London, she was soon swept into high society. Her quick wit and natural charm made her impossible to ignore. It was there she met Waldorf Astor, heir to one of the world's richest dynasties. Their wedding in 1906 wasn't just a union of two people, it flung open the doors to unimaginable wealth. The graduating gifts left even seasoned aristocrats astonished. The greatest of them, Cliveden, a vast country estate which would become both a symbol of Astor power and the backdrop of Nancy's legend. But if Cliveden was her stage, jewels became her crown. From William Waldorf Astor, the family patriarch, she received something truly extraordinary. A Cartier tiara set with one of Europe's most storied gems, the Sancy diamond, weighing over 55 carats. At the time, it was valued at $75,000, a fortune even for a billionaire. This was no simple ornament, it was a statement. Nancy was now part of Britain's highest aristocracy. From her husband Waldorf came another emblem of status, a necklace of 3 strands of superb pearls, a gift steeped in tradition, as pearls had long been the symbol of refinement and grace among the world's most powerful women. These first jewels set the tone for everything that followed. For Nancy, they were never just adornments. They were tools of politics and society, as important as her speeches and alliances. Every stone she wore spoke a message of power, of belonging, of influence. It was with these first gifts that Nancy began her journey, not just as Viscountess Astor, but as the owner of a truly remarkable collection, where European history, Cartier's artistry, and her own personal drama came together. But the most legendary pieces still lay ahead. Among them, the Cartier turquoise tiara and, of course, the famous Sancy diamond, whose story stretches across centuries. In the world of jewelry, only a handful of stones have names that ring out like legends. The Sancy is one of them, a diamond that seems to hold within it half a millennium of European history, kings, revolutions, and drama. And in the early 20th century, this extraordinary stone found its way into the hands of Nancy Astor, making her the guardian of one of the most famous diamonds in the world. The Sancy is a shield-shaped, slightly yellow diamond weighing 55.23 carats. Its story likely begins in the 14th century. According to legend, it belonged to Charles the Bold, Duke of Burgundy, who was killed at the Battle of Nancy in 1477. From there, the gem passed through the hands of European monarchs, worn by French kings Henry III and Henry IV, and later finding its way to England, where King James I added it to his treasures. The diamond's history has always been wrapped in myth. Its most famous tale involves Nicolas de Harlay, Seigneur de Sancy, whose name the stone still bears. He once entrusted the diamond to a servant, sending him on a dangerous journey to court. The servant was ambushed and killed, and when his body was found, the diamond was missing. Only after his body was examined was the stone discovered inside. He had swallowed it to keep it safe for his master. That story of loyalty and sacrifice gave the diamond an aura of mystery it has never lost. After the French Revolution, the Sancy vanished from the royal treasury, only to resurface years later in private hands. Its next great chapter came in 1906, when William Waldorf Astor bought it for an enormous sum and commissioned Cartier to set it into a unique tiara. The tiara was a masterpiece of the Belle Epoque. Platinum scrolls and foliate motifs, hundreds of glittering diamonds, and at its very center, the Sancy itself, rising above the whole design. Cartier was a master at creating jewels that felt both regal and ethereal, and this tiara was no exception.
For Nancy Astor, it was more than jewelry. It was a crown, a symbol of her place in the world. In 1937, she wore it to the coronation of King George VI, and for the first time, the world saw the Sancy displayed by a woman breaking traditions herself. Photographs from that day show it clearly. The glittering tiara, the great diamond, and Nancy, poised, confident, and very much under the public eye. But jewels are never just symbols of power. They carry risk and shadow as well. Nancy's maid, Rose Harrison, later recalled that for everyday occasions, a replica of the tiara was made, because the risk of losing the Sancy was simply too great. And even that wasn't always enough. Rose remembered one night when Nancy's sister, Nora Phipps, wore the diamond on a plain gold chain to a ball. At some point during the evening, it vanished. Panic erupted. Guests searched frantically until the next morning when it was discovered under a carpet, likely swept there by the long trains of dresses. During the Second World War, the diamond's fate once again became a source of anxiety. It was moved from its London bank vault to a safer hiding place near Cliveden, and even within the family there were heated arguments about where such a priceless stone should be kept during the Blitz. The Sancy's years with Nancy Astor mirrored her own life, dazzling, controversial, always the subject of whispers and speculation. After her death in 1964, the diamond remained with the Astor family until 1978, when her grandson, the fourth Viscount Astor, sold it to the Louvre. There it rests today, among the crown jewels of France, shining as a symbol of history itself, every facet another page in its saga. But the Sancy was not Nancy's only treasure. Her collection included other tiaras, among them the famous Cartier turquoise tiara, one of the most striking creations of the 1930s. If the Sancy tiara symbolized ancient legend, The turquoise tiara was the embodiment of boldness and modern style. Often described as one of Cartier's finest Art Deco designs, it combined European elegance with the exotic motifs of the East. At the heart of this tiara was a delicate diamond bandeau created around 1915. It was crafted in the finest traditions of the Belle Époque, airy platinum, refined ornaments shaped as crescent moons, bows, and quatrefoils. Different cuts were used: Old European, single cuts, and rose cuts, giving the piece a play of light and a lace-like delicacy. At its center shone a brilliant 3-carat diamond, a jewel worthy of being a masterpiece on its own. But in 1930, Cartier transformed this bandeau into something far striking. For Nancy Astor, the jeweler added bold new accents inspired by the exotic East, then at the height of fashion. Into the tiara were set carved turquoise stones, 3 elongated, feather-like plumes, each mounted on a diamond-set stem, along with a series of carved turquoise leaves. At the ends, the tiara flared into fan-shaped turquoise panels. The result was a bold yet harmonious composition, the cool sparkle of diamonds, paired with the matte blue of carved turquoise. This tiara perfectly reflected the spirit of Art Deco, a blend of Indian and Persian influences. Cartier at that time was experimenting with its so-called tutti frutti style, where brightly carved gemstones created lively, exotic patterns. Nancy's turquoise tiara became one of the finest examples of this aesthetic. There's even a famous photograph of Nancy wearing it at the London premiere of Charlie Chaplin's City Lights in 1931. She appears beside Chaplin himself and playwright George Bernard Shaw, her hair in sleek finger waves, the tiara arching elegantly across her forehead. She looks every bit the social icon, a woman who commanded not just the floor of Parliament, but also the attention of Europe's cultural elite. The tiara made such an impression that Nancy's sister, Phyllis Brand, wanted one as well. In 1935, her husband commissioned Cartier to create a similar design, diamonds and carved turquoise in the same bold style. That sister tiara, known today as the Brand tiara, has survived intact and now belongs to Cartier's Heritage Collection, displayed in major exhibitions around the world. Nancy's own turquoise tiara eventually resurfaced at a Bonhams auction decades later, causing a sensation. This was not just jewelry, it was a piece of social history from Britain's interwar years. The hammer price soared to nearly £900,000, far beyond expectations. But tiaras were only part of Nancy's dazzling image. She also owned other spectacular jewels that cemented her role as a political queen. At the 1937 coronation of George VI, alongside the Sancy diamond, she wore one of her favorite ensembles, a massive diamond stomacher paired with a diamond Riviera necklace. The stomacher cascaded down her gown in a cascade of diamond leaves and floral motifs. Together with the tiara, the effect was regal, the image of a woman whose influence rivaled that of the royal family itself. Nancy also had a deep affection for colored stones. One of her most remarkable jewels was a Belle Époque aquamarine pendant created around 1910. The centerpiece was a rectangular aquamarine weighing almost 88 carats, with an even larger briolette cut drop suspended below it. The piece was accented with small diamonds, its platinum over gold setting crafted to appear light and ethereal. The aquamarines had a rare greenish-blue tint, marking them as early Brazilian stones, untouched by modern heat treatment. That aquamarine pendant became a symbol of Nancy's love for the stone. She even had a separate tiara set with aquamarines. But what's most surprising is how casually it was kept. According to her great-granddaughter, the jewel was stored for years wrapped in scraps of paper inside an ordinary cigarette box, a priceless relic forgotten in time. Her love of pearls is equally clear. In 2014, Bonhams auctioned a jabot pin from the early 20th century decorated with Baroque natural pearls. A year later, Christie sold another of her brooches. This one centered around a remarkable natural pearl measuring 17.5 millimeters across. These pieces show that, like many women of her era, Nancy adored pearls and considered them an essential part of formal style.
But perhaps her most unexpected gesture came in 1959, when she was granted the freedom of the city of Plymouth. Instead of keeping all her jewels private, she presented the city with an astonishing sapphire and diamond necklace. The piece was a long chain of diamonds, set with shamrock motifs and sapphires, designed to break down into 6 separate parts, shorter necklaces and bracelets. Nancy herself sometimes wore the bracelets on both wrists at once. The gift came with a comic twist. On the day she handed the necklace to the city, one of its pendants fell off and went missing. It was later found in a gutter outside her hotel. Her maid, Rose Harrison, dryly remarked, "I suppose I should be entitled to a finder's reward." From the turquoise tiara to the sapphire necklace, Nancy Astor's jewels created a fascinating contradiction. In Parliament, she appeared in plain dark suits, almost like a civil servant with no taste for excess. But at balls and coronations, she shone like a queen. For her, jewelry wasn't just luxury, it was protection, influence, and a tool in her political game. Cliveden, her great country estate, embodied that duality too. Gifted by her father-in-law as a wedding present, it became a stage for power and splendor. Prime ministers, royals, and writers gathered there. Young princesses Elizabeth and Margaret were said to have danced on carpets spread across its terraces under the night sky. But behind the glitter, shadows lingered. In the 1930s, newspapers began using the phrase the Cliveden set to describe Nancy's close circle of powerful friends, accused of harboring sympathy for Hitler and supporting appeasement. At the height of tension, those rumors struck a heavy blow to her reputation. Later, it became known that Nancy Astor's own name appeared in Hitler's infamous Black Book, a list of people to be arrested immediately if Germany invaded Britain. Hearing this, Nancy reportedly quipped, "That's the best proof Cliveden was not pro-fascist." Still, the stigma lingered, and her name remained surrounded by controversy. And yet, in that atmosphere of scandal, her jewels shone even brighter. Each appearance in a tiara or stomacher became a statement. Society seemed to search her diamonds for clues. Where did she stand? Whose side was she on? Her devoted maid, Rose Harrison, later left memoirs that shed light not only on Nancy's life, but also on her jewels. According to Rose, Nancy owned no fewer than 5 tiaras. Curiously, Nancy's turquoise Cartier tiara was never mentioned directly in Rose Harrison's list. Did she consider it less important, or did she simply omit it from memory? Perhaps she described it in other terms. The question remains, was it one of Nancy's 5 tiaras, or did it stand apart as something unique? The fate of these jewels after Nancy's death is just as mysterious as their origins. The Sancy diamond was sold in 1978 and now rests in the Louvre, among the French crown jewels. The turquoise tiara resurfaced at a Bonhams auction, where it was snapped up by a private collector. But what became of the aquamarine tiara? Where is the so-called spiky tiara? And the diamond and pearl bandeau? Was it dismantled or remade into something new? So ended the jewelry story of Nancy Astor, the first woman in the British Parliament and the custodian of legendary stones that outlived kings and revolutions. But our story is far from over, because in the second half of the 20th century, the Astor name would shine again, this time on the streets of Manhattan, in the dazzling life of Brooke Aster. If Nancy Astor symbolized the breakthrough of women into British politics, then Brooke Aster embodied the glamour and philanthropy of New York. Her life was equal parts romance and drama, filled with glittering parties, flawless portraits, but also betrayal and personal tragedy. Roberta Brooke Russell was born on March 30th, 1902, in Portsmouth, Virginia. Her father, John Henry Russell, Jr., was the 16th Commandant of the U.S. Marine Corps, and Brooke's childhood was spent in far-flung corners of the world, from Haiti to China. Even as a girl, she developed an eye for beauty and collected mementos from distant lands. Her first marriage was a disaster. Her husband, Anthony Dryden Couser, came from an influential family but was abusive, alcoholic, and unfaithful. Later, Brooke would recall, "Those were the worst years of my life." From this marriage, she had a son, Anthony. Her second marriage in 1932 was far happier. She wed Charles Henry Marshall, or Buddy as they called him, an investment banker and descendant of James Lennox, founder of the Lennox Library. With him, she raised 2 stepchildren and finally found stability. But fate had yet another twist in store. Only 11 months after Buddy's death, Brooke remarried, this time to Vincent Astor in 1953. Chairman of Newsweek and heir to a vast fortune. Their marriage lasted just 6 years. Vincent died in 1959. But those 6 years changed everything. Brooke became one of the wealthiest women in America, inheriting part of his estate and control of his charitable foundation, which she used to channel hundreds of millions of dollars into museums, libraries, and cultural institutions.
To society, she became known as a great philanthropist, but to those closest to her, she was also a woman utterly devoted to her jewels. Brooke never stepped outside without them. Even in her later years, when her steps had slowed, diamonds, emeralds, and pearls still gleamed on her hands and around her neck. Her collection grew over time, but its most iconic pieces came through her marriage to Vincent Astor, and it all began with the ring. Her engagement ring caused a sensation, even in Manhattan. At its center was a magnificent 22.84-carat emerald encircled by diamonds. On the night of their engagement, Brooke wore it to complement her Balmain gown in green satin. In her autobiography, she admitted, "I wore the ring that evening to complete the color scheme." For her, the ring was more than a symbol of marriage, it was a personal emblem of power. Decades later, when it was sold at Sotheby's for $1.2 million, every dollar of the proceeds went to charity, exactly as Brooke would have wished. But the ring was only the beginning. The true treasures came after Vincent's death, when Brooke received her final gift from him, a Bulgari necklace he had ordered during his lifetime, but which was delivered after his passing. If the emerald ring marked her union with Vincent, this necklace defined her legend. The Bulgari necklace, created in 1959, was a true hymn to emeralds. It held 13 drop-shaped emeralds weighing around 71 carats, 14 cabochon emeralds totaling 41 carats, 14 marquise-cut diamonds weighing 8.5 carats, and about 50 carats of round diamonds, all of it set in platinum and gold, measuring 14.5 inches. Under the lights, it shimmered as though each emerald drop were a firefly caught mid-dance. In her autobiography, Brooke recalled that she received the letter from Bulgari describing the necklace almost 2 years after her husband's death. It was his final gift, the most precious one. That necklace became the jewel of her collection. When it went under the hammer at Sotheby's in 2012, it sold for $686,500. But for Brooke, its value was never measured in money. To her, it was a symbol of love, a love even death could not take away. Another highlight of her collection was a brooch by Van Cleef & Arpels, created in New York in 1965, designed as a flower. It featured a square-cut emerald of 9.68 carats at its center, surrounded by more than 70 diamonds, pairs, marquise, and rounds, weighing over 27 carats in total. It wasn't just a flower, it was spring itself, frozen in stone. Brooke often wore this brooch to official receptions. Its vivid green center always drew the eye, glowing against her auburn hair and warm smile. It embodied a woman whose philanthropy walked hand in hand with regal elegance.
Equally striking was a set created by Cartier and Van Cleef & Arpels, a necklace and earrings inspired by the grandeur of the great moguls.
The necklace featured old-cut diamonds weighing about 22.5 carats, from which 3 large cultured pearls, each over 13 millimeters, were suspended. The earrings completed the set, with diamonds weighing around 4 carats and 2 more pearl drops. The ensemble looked as if it had been lifted from a 17th century Indian palace and brought to 20th century Manhattan. On Brooke's neck, it became a timeless classic, carrying with it echoes of empires, but transformed into the language of modern elegance. She also treasured a bold brooch by David Webb, the American jeweler famed for his daring, sculptural designs. This piece, crafted in gold and platinum, took the form of a flower set with 11.60 carats of diamonds. It wasn't a dainty Victorian jewel. It was dramatic, heavy, almost architectural. Brooke loved to wear it in the years when fashion demanded boldness and scale. These emeralds, diamonds, and pearls shaped her image as a woman who didn't just own jewelry, she wore it in a way that made it part of her legend. But Brooke's taste went beyond the classics. She delighted in whimsical, almost fantastical jewels that brought lightness and personality to her style. If emeralds and diamonds made her the queen of Manhattan, her animal and insect brooches added humor, charm, and individuality. One of the most memorable was a butterfly brooch. Its wings shimmered with 22 sapphires, its body set with a triangular emerald and 2 pear-shaped rubies, its eyes sparkling with cabochon sapphires. Completing the design were diamonds weighing nearly 17 carats. The effect was lifelike, a jewel that looked ready to flutter away at any moment. Another favorite was a bow brooch by Boucheron, crafted in France. It combined calibre-cut emeralds, black enamel, and old-cut diamonds, with a marquise diamond of 0.40 carats at its center. The brooch brought together 2 worlds, French refinement and English restraint, making it one of her most versatile pieces. No less impressive was her Bombay-style bracelet. It was set with 11 cushion-cut emeralds totaling about 21 carats, framed by another 36 carats of smaller emeralds and a dazzling 58 carats of diamonds. This bracelet was pure spectacle, impossible to ignore. It lit up her wrist as if it carried the very lights of New York itself. One of the most cherished pieces in Brooke's heart was a lion brooch by Van Cleef & Arpels. This lion was inspired by the New York Public Library, an institution Brooke had supported for decades. The lion perched on a branch of red coral, with ruby eyes and a body encrusted in diamonds of every shade: white, yellow, pink, even brown. Its tail was articulated, swaying gently with every step she took, giving the illusion of a living creature. When Sotheby's put it up for sale, it was estimated at $20,000 to $30,000, but because it was so closely tied to Brooke and her legend, it soared to $134,500. Equally fantastical was another brooch, a ruby bird, also by Van Cleef & Arpels. Its body glittered with about 10.5 carats of rubies, while its wings sparkled with round and baguette-cut diamonds totaling 7.8 carats. Perched on a golden branch, the bird seemed to blaze with red fire against her dress, catching every eye in the room. Her bracelets were just as impressive. One platinum bracelet combined diamonds, emeralds, and sapphires. More than 23 carats of diamonds, 30 emeralds, and 50 sapphires. It perfectly captured Brooke's love of bold contrasts: the cold brilliance of diamonds, the vivid green of emeralds, and the deep blue of sapphires. The playful side of her collection found its finale in a pearl and diamond tassel necklace. It consisted of 85 cultured pearls, each between 8.5 and 9.6 millimeters, strung into 2 strands. On one side, a foliate motif set with diamonds held 2 delicate tassels that swayed as she moved. The diamonds alone weighed over 10.6 carats, while the short 14-inch length of the necklace accentuated the elegance of her neckline. Pearls were a particular weakness of Brooke's. Unlike Nancy, who treated pearls as a symbol of tradition and restraint, Brooke used them to create a sense of lightness and charm. She loved pairing pearls with diamonds, turning classic formality into playful elegance. It was these whimsical jewels, lions, birds, butterflies, bows, that made her collection truly unique. They showed Brooke's ability to balance grandeur with humor, aristocracy with wit. But as with Nancy, there came a moment of drama in the fate of her jewels. After her death in 2007, Brooke's collection went under the hammer at Sotheby's and caused a sensation. The very pieces that had glittered through decades of Manhattan soirees now passed into private collections for record-breaking sums. Two women, one name, two very different destinies. Nancy Astor, the Viscountess, who became the first woman to sit in the British Parliament. Brooke Aster, the Queen of Manhattan, a philanthropist whose name became synonymous with New York elegance. Oceans, eras, and circumstances divided them, yet one thing united them: their jewels. Two Asters left behind more than wealth. They left behind stories, where diamonds and emeralds became metaphors of their eras. One era, British, political, turbulent, heavy with legend. The other, American, glamorous, Manhattan bright, where jewels gleamed as brilliantly as the city lights themselves. And so, looking at their collections today, we're left with a question. What captures the imagination more? A tiara crowned with a diamond that survived kings and revolutions? Or a necklace given as a husband's final token of love, meant to endure even after death? The choice is yours.